One of the biggest pressures that I see in this work is the constant need as practitioners to always look like we have our shit together, you know, emotionally regulated, spiritually clear, spiritually wise, never thrown off, never having a bad day. Like our own process somehow has to be invisible once we step into the role of practitioner. And it's almost as if the moment we hold space for someone else, we feel we're no longer allowed to, have our own human experience. We're not allowed to be normal functioning humans. And the weight of that expectation, oh wow, it can be exhausting, burnout. Especially when it's not spoken out aloud or acknowledged. It's just something that we pick up and carry. This pressure shows up in all kinds of ways. You might find yourself editing what you say in a session, so you always sound endlessly wise and like you really know your stuff. Or like you're perfectly centered and calm and at peace. You might only post online when you have something polished and inspiring and perfect, that you have to share with the world. Carefully leaving out anything that feels too raw or messy or real. Or you might feel a twinge of guilt for needing space or rest or support or take healing for yourself, because part of you thinks you should be able to manage it all on your own. And over time, this creates a unspoken rule that if I'm holding space for others, my own process must stay hidden. And that rule starts to shape how we show up in our sessions and with our clients and in every part of our work and in every part of our life. Okay, it's going to bleed over. And underneath that pressure is often a mix of fears and beliefs that we've picked up along the way. There's the fear of being seen as unprofessional or unready, or you're not knowing what you're doing. The fear of losing someone's trust if they knew that we were struggling ourselves with our own stuff. Sometimes there's even golly shame in admitting that despite all our tools and all our training, we still face challenges and doubts and personal pain. And for many practitioners, there's this ingrained belief that being a good practitioner means performing clarity and wisdom and centeredness and peacefulness 24/7, as if our value depends on looking like we've already arrived at some perfect destination. What crap is that? The problem is, performing the role instead of living the reality disconnects us from ourselves, from our process, from our clients, from our sessions, and from life. It starts to split us into two parts. The public-facing practitioner who always seems calm and ready and supportive, and the private self who's trying to just figure it out. That split costs us energy we don't have to spare. And it can absolutely build up resentment, because deep down, we know we're not being fully honest. And it's going to chip away at our authenticity, which is one of the most valuable things we bring into our sessions. We work from our authentic self. Our clients might not be able to name what's going on, but they certainly will feel when something isn't quite aligned. This is where congruence becomes such an essential skill. Congruence is about being inwardly and outwardly aligned. Okay, so your inner landscape and your outer landscape are aligned with one another. So showing up in a way that matches your real state rather than forcing yourself into a performed role. It's not about oversharing your personal life with your clients. Okay, don't misunderstand. It's not about making every session about you. It's about being honest in your presence, allowing your actual experience to be a part of the space that you hold, rather than something that you try and hide, or put a mask up and pretend like it's not there. When we practice congruence, we stop burning energy trying to maintain appearances, because maintaining appearances is exhausting. Okay, I've done it. Don't do that. And we start building deeper trust, both with ourselves and with the clients that we work with, and they'll start to develop more trust with us. Congruence in action can be incredibly simple. It might mean pausing before a session to check in with yourself and acknowledge, shit, I'm really tired today, but you know what? I'm still have enough presence for my client. It may mean allowing yourself to have a quiet day in your practice without forcing an upbeat, I got all my shit together and I'm this perfect practitioner, for the sake of optics. It's about showing up as a whole human, with your skills and experience and humanity intact. Okay, this doesn't weaken your professionalism. It doesn't mean that you stink at your work. People are going to be like, oh God, you're not a professional practitioner. It strengthens it, because people can feel the difference between someone who is performing their role and someone who is actually present in the role. They are the role. They embody the role. And when we drop the need to look the part and focus instead on congruence and alignment, we give ourselves permission to be real, to be authentic, to be ourselves. And when we're real with the people that we're serving, we we feel more permission. They feel more permission to be real. That authenticity creates a safer, more grounded space for everyone involved. You're not trusted because you're perfect, okay? You are trusted because you're genuine and you're willing to meet people where you are, rather than where you think that you should be. Okay, or where society tells you that you should be. If you're feeling the weight of having to hold up that image of being the perfect practitioner, maybe it's time to experiment with letting congruence do the heavy lifting instead. It's not about lowering your standards, okay, or becoming careless with your work. It's about aligning your inner reality with your outer presence, so that the work you're doing comes from a place of truth, not performance, or pretending. And that shift from performing to being is where so much of the real magic happens in sessions. This is the kind of work I explore in my mentoring. Okay, with practitioners, we look at the patterns that drain you, the habits that keep you out of alignment as a practitioner, and the skills that bring you back to yourself. And if this is resonating with you and it's something that you want to explore, how can congruence shift the way that you work and that you live and that you show up in your sessions? You can find a link to my mentoring in the description for this video. But absolutely cultivate the skill of congruence for yourself, because it will allow you to show up in sessions more fully and far more authentically, and you will be way less exhausted.